So today I'm really excited to have an entrepreneur and friend that I really look up to. His name is Nigel Thomas, and he is one of the most incredibly talented, driven, and kind folks that I have personally met on LinkedIn. Nigel grew his previous performance marketing agency to 140K MRR and is now working on his new venture, David to Goliath. I think for people who don't know you, it would be amazing for you to share a bit more about yourself and tell us your story, Nigel.
Yeah, sure. And thank you so much for letting me be here today, Audrey. I'm a big fan of what you're doing on LinkedIn, as well as all the amazing content you're putting out everywhere online for other entrepreneurs. And you really inspire me to do more. So, firstly, before we get into my backstory, a big shout out to you, Audrey. And I think everyone, including myself, should take a leaf out of your book and definitely be inspired that you can do so much in such a short space of time if you really put your mind to it. And you obviously are a great testament to what's possible, Audrey. So thank you for being you first and foremost.
Oh, thank you so much. It made my day.
So yeah, in terms of me, I mean, I'm not one of these entrepreneurs who has this backstory of, candy empires and selling lemonade stands at school. At 26 years old, believe it or not, I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. I had to Google it, literally.
Really?
And I was working in a big corporation, ACOM, a big construction consultancy. And I decided, to the dismay of my parents, that I would quit and I would start freelancing on Upwork. So I threw my chartered surveyorship in the bin and I just went for it. And that was the best decision I ever made in my life because for the first time, instead of pleasing others, I actually did something that I believed in. And that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. Obviously, there's been twists, there's been turns. I've scaled three marketing agencies. The first one failed. The second one was a real estate agency, a lead gen agency, which I managed to get to about 90K a month. Then I found out the owner was a narcissist, so that one didn't end too well. But thankfully, I had another opportunity, which was Alpha Inbound, which you talked about. So I met the founder previously. I phoned him up, told him that really I wanted a redemption story. I wanted to prove to myself and the world that even though I'd scaled this last agency and obviously it was run into the ground eventually, that I had what it took. So I made this bold promise and said to him, Audrey, I'll get this agency to 100K a month. Don't know exactly how I'm going to do it. I just know I am not going to stop until I've got the job done. And then that was in 2021. In September 2023, we did pass that goal. We got to 123,000 revenue. And then obviously, as you said, we finished the year pretty strong. And from the outside looking in, I built this big audience on LinkedIn. We got some great team members. We work with some of the best brands in the e-commerce space. Everything was sunshine and rainbows. Everything was perfect. But little did my team know, on the inside, I was crumbling. The person, the woman that gave me all the self-belief and confidence to walk on stage in front of hundreds of people, lead these teams, build these agencies, she left me overnight and it shattered my world into 1,000 pieces. And I got to the brink where I was nearly thinking of taking my own life. And I said to myself in that dark moment, Audrey, that I'm not going to do this for me. I'm going to do this for everyone else who deserves a second chance in life. I'm going to rebuild my life from scratch and I'm going to document the journey and show people through relentless action what's possible. And that's when I started David to Goliath. So that's what I'm doing now. And hopefully I can spread this message and help other entrepreneurs and other people who are going through the struggle and they really want to grab life by the horns and bring their dreams to reality.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. Not many people are able to be so vulnerable, and not many people are able to share these deep personal stories. But I think from your journey and experience, a lot of people found courage and light. So for me, like I have been following your content since, quite some time back. And every time I read a personal story that seems really personal because it's hard to talk about these things, then it really reminds me that we are all human and we do go through, you know, stuff at work or in life and shit hits the fan. But you also are able to find that community of support or at least people around you who seem to be able to motivate you and encourage you. I think that's the beauty of an online community as well.
Yeah, it's not sunshine and rainbows. We're all perfectly imperfect, as I like to say, as humans. And I think that as entrepreneurs, free thinkers, we should lean into what makes us weird. I am not a normal person by any stretch of the imagination. I'm weird, I'm obsessive, I do crazy things. And you know what, Audrey? I love it. And I'm leaning into that personality now. And all the people who don't like me, that's their problem.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you've got to understand that not everyone's going to like you in this world. And we can talk about, obviously, how I scaled the agencies, but content is a great filter. And if you lean into who you are as a person, who you actually are, the conversations that you have behind closed doors, the skeletons in your closet that you don't want anyone to know about, if you can share those things, it would draw the people towards you that really, really align with you on a personal level. And it will also filter out the people who don't. And by the way, those people that are drawn towards you, and in terms of a business sense, they will be your investors, they will be your best team members, they will be your best partners, they will be your best clients. And that's why, if you lean into who you truly are as a person, long term, it's the best strategic advantage, bar none.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom in that. And I think people often like to separate their personal life and their, work life. But sometimes just showing a bit of your personality and your story and, telling them how you got to where you are today. And even if nothing is perfect yet and you're still working on things, it's fine. And I think it makes us a little bit more human. And I think like what you said, it brings you the right audience who aligns with your values. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No one's getting to the end of their life sitting on their deathbed, Audrey, and saying, wow, I wish I didn't have a more epic story. Like, that's never the way someone ends. So this is, a call to action for everyone to get out there and do crazy shit and just live the life and share it with the world. I can't think of a better way.
Like living every day as if it's your last. Yeah, really embodying that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would love to know, like, I know you talked about the three agencies that you worked with,
Mhm.
right? What do you think didn't work for the first one? And what do you think worked amazingly for the third agency?
Yeah, if I was going to start again, I would start networking a lot faster and building partnerships. I think a lot of agencies massively underestimate, partnerships. And it was actually a conversation I had with Drew Green. So Drew Green is the CEO of Indochino. This guy has an incredible story himself. He basically got offered a CEO role at one of Amazon's biggest divisions with a blank check, like could have whatever he wanted. And he said no. He turned that down. He went to Indochino, which were a failing company, a men's suitwear brand in Canada. Within 6 years, turned them round, and now they're doing, I think, 150 million in revenue, and they're the second fastest growing company in the entirety of Canada. And he told me, outside of your people, which are the most important thing in your organization, the next most important thing in relationships are your partners. And when he told me about this, it massively changed my mindset on everything, because instead of just doing cold outreach, trying to win one client at a time, you can build partnerships with people in business that literally have access to hundreds of your ideal clients, to the point where 2, 3 years down the line, you can get one WhatsApp message, which is an introduction to, like I said, tens or hundreds of your ideal clients. And I wish that I knew this sooner, because I was just stuck behind my computer, typing away, trying to send out cold emails, just living the remote life. And I wasn't really getting anywhere. And it was only when I started putting myself out there. Yes, obviously, content helps that on a larger scale. But when I start building relationships with people, and you know what, Audrey, as we're having this conversation here, it's just so much more fun when you're in the trenches with other people, other entrepreneurs, the ideas you get, but just the energy around it, it makes it so much more fun when there's other people that are going through the same shit as you. And when you can build those partnerships, and that also leads to new business, that's something that I realized way too late, and that I do definitely like, I'd start a lot sooner if I started again.
Yeah, I think partnership is a huge growth lever that maybe not many agencies or companies pull. Even in
Mhm.
the AI space, right? I've met so many incredible folks on LinkedIn. And the interesting thing is always if I have an opportunity that I can't solve, then I know who to direct the clients to. So it's also a great way to,
Exactly.
yeah, to build relationships on both ends and everyone can grow towards,
Yeah.
something bigger.
Yeah, let me just give some tactical advice here, because a lot of agencies that are, just starting out, they often come to me and they say, "Yeah, Nigel, that sounds great, building partnerships, people who have access to your ideal clients, but I'm just getting started out. What do I have to offer? I can't offer any business." And that's where a lot of these people are wrong. So, how can you build a partnership? Well, firstly, you need to understand what the goals are of the person that you're trying to help. Okay. That's step one. Now, if you can't get on a call with them, you look at their content online, you do your research, and you understand in depth what their goals are. And then the next step is you understand to their goals faster. Now, this is where solutions come into place. Obviously, if you can refer them business, that's going to help them solve their goals faster, right? That's easy. But we've got to start thinking outside the box, Audrey. So, what do you do if you haven't got business to refer to these partners? You can introduce them to someone. I'll give you an example of something that I did. So I knew there was big e-commerce brands that are in the UK and they wanted to expand their operations into the United States, but they didn't have a strategic distributor to be able to get their products out there. So what I did is I reached into my network, I found an American distributor, and I connected those two people. Now think about that. How valuable is that? How valuable is one connection to someone who can open an entire new business in another country, which the US is the biggest market? That was a massive problem solved for this person, and managed to massively, get to their goals a lot faster, right? So I built a lot of value in that relationship. We actually went on to work with that company, and they were one of our most successful ever clients. And that's how I started the relationship out. So I think the message is you don't have to, even if you're starting out, have the business to refer to people. You can also help strategically solve their problems by introducing to someone, maybe sharing a piece of content which helps them out. Never think that it's too early to start. You just have to be willing to put in the work and be that one guy or girl who just goes out of their way to help them solve the problems. And I promise you that long term, this will come back and help you in ways that you never ever imagined.
Definitely. I think the relationship aspect is amazing, and the kind of like opportunities you can attract as well as provide by knowing people is also something that I personally have felt have led me to, open new doors, right? But I would love to ask you, like, do you, as an agency, right, do you have to craft a compelling partnership offer, or was it more relationship based?
Yeah, it was more relationship based. I think if you got to be strategic, right? So let's say I'm running a performance marketing agency as I was at Alpha Inbound. Now, I know that my clients, e-commerce brands, they obviously use different tech products. We are mostly working with Shopify that help them increase their revenue, right? So, for example, I don't know, an email marketing tool such as Klaviyo. Now, if I can introduce them to a better email marketing tool, which obviously increases their revenue more, not only does that give business to the partner, the email marketing tool, it also helps increase the revenue of the client. So I think you need to be honest in what actually helps your client at the end of the day, because that's the primary objective here. So there's no point in building partnerships with people who they're not going to impact your client and your service, because then you're just wasting everyone's time. And I think too many people try and build partnerships and they're not strategic about it, right?
Definitely. And I have a follow-up question to that, right? So partnerships is a great like lever, right, to pull.
Yeah.
But in terms of like if you are someone who is starting out, you have no connections, no nothing, and you want to acquire your first 100 customers, what kind of advice would you give? Because the first 100 is the hardest to achieve for
Of
most
course.
founders.
Yeah, so in sales, at any point in the market, 3% of people are always ready to buy. Okay. This is why cold outbound still works. So,
Mm.
and it's all about timing. If you were to come to me, Audrey, and to say to me, hey, Nigel, or send an email in my inbox and you've done your research, hey, Nigel, and by the way, if anyone can help me with this, it'd be great. I help newsletters like David to Goliath grow on LinkedIn to 100,000 subscribers in one calendar year. Okay. I would be very interested to open that email.
Mm.
Why? Because it's timing. Right now, I need that help. In 6 months' time, I might not need that help. So that's the point. 3% of the market are always ready to buy. So at the start, you want to get revenue fast. You do outbound and it's a numbers game, and you find the 3% of the market that are ready to buy. Now, if you're really wanting to increase the chances, you work for free. And then in return, you get a testimonial. Then obviously you build up that testimonial and you use that to go and get more clients that can pay for your service, all right? Or you ask those people for referrals. Now, what about the big pie, the 97%? Well, that's where you have to start putting content out there. So whilst you're in the background doing your outbound sales, you start posting how you're helping your clients and you document your journey, right? And I'm not a person who believes, you already know from my content, Audrey, from not sharing everything. Like, just share everything, like all of your internal processes, all of your findings, because if the 97% of the market implement what you say and it works, who do you think they're going to come to when they need help with that problem? Because in business, as we know, Audrey, the one thing that we've all got the same time with is time, right?
Yeah.
We've all got the same 24 hours in a day. And the big business owners, they haven't got time to be able to solve these problems. So they will come to you. But first, you need to plant the seed. I've got this process, which is basically, plant the seed, cultivate it with the content, and
Yeah.
then harvest. So when you harvest, obviously, then you're doing more bottom of funnel post, or obviously get people to book calls in with you. But it takes time to win trust. There's a reason that it takes 7 touch points from someone who's never heard of your service before or product to become a customer. It takes time to build that trust. 70% of all business decisions are made on word of mouth.
Mm.
Okay. So when people see you, they're going to ask their friends about you. But if you've got content, and I have this thing in content, Audrey, called the sphere of influence, because a lot of agencies in my space, they were just putting out content for their ideal client, right?
Yeah.
And for me, at the time, we were doing skincare, supplement, and CBD brands on Shopify, 5 to 20 million in revenue. There's only about 8,000 people in the market. So if I was just to put a content out for there, not many people. But the sphere of influence, what I call it, is basically when that company goes to make a decision about working with a new marketing agency, such as Alpha Inbound at the time, who do they speak to in that decision making process? And I mapped out a diagram. So they're going to speak to their internal team. Hey, guys, do you know we're a great marketing agency? They're going to speak to their partners. Hey, do you know a great marketing agency? They're going to speak to their friends who are also like the other e-commerce owners. They're going to do their research online. Now, think about it. If every single time they ask that question within their sphere of influence, imagine if the same answer comes back every time. Nigel Thomas at Alpha Inbound, Nigel Thomas at Alpha Inbound, Nigel Thomas at Alpha Inbound. Who do you think they're going to work with? And that's where you plant more seeds. Why I think top of funnel marketing, even if it's not strategically linked to your ICP,
Yeah.
is really important, because then you have awareness and you're planting more seeds, which means you can cultivate and harvest more further down the line. So to summarize, go to 3% of the market at the start of cold outbound, but in the background, build content so you're planting seeds for the 97% of the market, and think about the decision-making tree when they make that decision to work with your company. And I promise you, you'll have way more opportunities than you ever imagined. It's just going to take some time.
I hear you on that, and I also agree about, content being queen. Content being the key to unlock a lot of things. So like at least for me, I've been on LinkedIn for about 9 months, and I started like from scratch, like without knowing anyone. But because of the consistency in the content I've been putting out, I managed to unlock many speaking opportunities in with organizations I could have never imagined. And because one organization invited me, right, then it made sense for other organizations to be like, hey, I'll do a check. Oh, she's credible, she's good. All right, I'll invite her as well. So I can see the growth because of the presence and just being really consistent with the content.
Yeah, I think it's the red dress, really, though.
Yes, that's a secret. If I change my dress color, no one would know me at all. Black, not Audrey. Yeah, but
It does help you stand out, though.
yeah, I call it personal branding. So when it comes to like personal branding, right, was LinkedIn basically your main channel for customer acquisition for the agencies you were working with?
Yeah, so, but it wasn't an overnight success. So I basically heard this interview with Stephen Bartlett, and he was talking about the situation because this was why I started my personal brand in 2021. He was talking about he went to pitch 10 investors on one of their big projects. And before the meeting started, 7 out of the 10 people asked to have a photo with him. And I realized in that moment, and he said, my reputation got to the room before I did, but he wasn't pitching investors that day, Audrey. He was pitching his fans. Now imagine the power and leverage that gives you in those business relationships. And that was when I said to myself, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how much effort it takes. I am blocking out 2 hours a day in my calendar to do LinkedIn content. And here was the big unlock for me, Audrey. I said to myself, I am going to set the expectation. I'm going to post every single day for an entire year and expect nothing in return. And I promise you, that's the expectation I set. And that was the best thing that could have happened to me. So within that first year of 2022, I posted every single day and I got my LinkedIn account to about 7,000 followers. And I didn't really bring in much revenue. Now, people will say, well, what was the point in that? You could have been doing outbound sales, partnerships, networking, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's why it made sense. In 2023, that LinkedIn account went from 7 to 40,000 followers. But most importantly, it brought in $600,000 of inbound revenue to my business. But it was only possible because I put the year in advance beforehand to build the foundation and figure out what worked and figure out what didn't. So that's the power of compounding. And that's why I say to people and agencies that are running around like headless chickens, like I was, that you're trying to find new hires, you're trying to find investors, you're obviously trying to find qualified clients that can pay you more money. You're going to do all those things anyway. The
Yeah.
personal brand literally connects all of those dots with one asset. It just takes time. So you've got to put more time in now, but later you save so much time. And just like you, there were way more opportunities that I never even imagined, like speaking on stage in front of 300 agency owners, things like that, big, massive podcasts that just came through to me. And that was because I put in all that time up front to build that foundation. I still think for a lot of B2B companies, they don't realize the power in this thing. And the last thing I'll say in that, Audrey, is people think they're too late. Now, if we expand this out to the world, only half the world out of the 8 billion, 8 billion people that are online have access to the internet as we speak right now. Half the world is still going to get online. So if you think you were too late, you're not. This movement is only just starting now. And for a lot of B2B companies who are still doing things the old fashioned way, they need to wake up and they need to understand that the personal brand is probably, if not the biggest asset that they can start building. And especially when that momentum kicks in, it's going to unlock so many doors.
And I think it's not only for the company's perspective, it's also from an individual's perspective. Like what I always say, right? Your personal brand is your personal asset. Nobody can take that away from you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think with that in mind, right, I'm also wondering, since now we figured out, okay, how to go from 0 to 1, your first 100 customers, But the question is, how do you scale? I think that is also like a big blocker for a lot of solopreneurs. For myself, I sort of figured out, me as a consultant, I'm pretty comfortable with it. But if I really want to take things to the next level, what should
Yeah.
I do and what advice would you give?
Yeah, so this is where I might make a few enemies, but I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. I think that solopreneurship is bullshit, and I'll tell you why. Firstly, if it's an agency is listening to this, agencies, if you strip everything back, it's scaling people. That's what an agency is. You're literally scaling people. So if you don't know how to lead, you're never going to be able to make it big because in reality, everyone, is worried about AI and worried about they've got to learn everything. I don't think like that. I think I'm going to build up resources and I'm going to hire the best IA expert. Maybe at some point I'll get the opportunity to work with the fantastic Audrey, who knows? But the point is if you know how to lead teams and you have a good vision and a culture, A players will want to come and work with you. And that's the big unlock. And why I think solopreneurship is bullshit is because solopreneurship is dressed up as this thing where you escape the 9 to 5, and fair play to anyone who's done that. And then you create, freedom for yourself. But sat at home, working on everything, including all the things you don't like. So, for example, marketing, sales, finances, operations, recruitment, HR. You've got to do everything yourself. And that's not how humans are hardwired. If we go back to our ancestors, Audrey, we are tribal by nature. The reason why we're on this call today is not because one person went out and did it all alone. It's because we banded together as tribes and we each focus on our strengths. And my definition of freedom, Audrey, is only working on what I love on every single day and surrounding myself and building a team of people who also work on what they love on. And that will obviously complement my strengths in the areas that I have weaknesses in. So I really think the big unlock, and it just doesn't get talked about enough for agencies, is you have to know how to lead teams, or you've got to have someone within your team who is a leader, because not everyone should be a leader. It doesn't come naturally to everyone. For me, it does, and I love leading. And by the way, if you want a definition of what leadership is, it's the person who's willing to sacrifice most for their people. It's not about taking the credit. It's not about ruling with an iron fist. That's the old school ways that are really outdated. It's about who is willing to sacrifice the most of their people. And it's a lonely job, I'll tell you. But if you really want to have success in a service-based business, you've got to know how to lead teams. And that is the big unlock. And I'll give one example. Alpha Inbound, we were about 40, 50K a month, and I was running around like a headless chicken. I was trying to do everything myself, and there just was not enough hours in the day. And then I started working with a mentor. Shout out to Rachel Jacobs. She's a fantastic person in the ecom and agency operator space. And she helped me productize our agency more. But the biggest unlock was I hired an operations manager from the US. And I don't know if you know the book Rocket Fuel, which is about the visionary and the integrator. I'm the visionary. He was the integrator that I needed. And basically, he managed the entire day-to-day operations of the agency, a true A player who was thinking for himself and made the operations way better than I could. And sure, we got to 1.2 million in revenue, which is great. But the best part was our profit margins went from 15 to 30% because this guy was just doing operations all of the time. And it was at that point when I got all my time back, I realized that the big unlock is just hiring better people and knowing how to lead them.
And that is the toughest thing that most people would face in their entrepreneurship journey. I think it's challenging. It's like human, and you need to transfer your skills and you need to inspire them and guide them. And I think it takes a special something to be able to do it well.
Yeah, but I actually think a lot of people are great leaders. They just don't realize it yet. And I think if more people put themselves out there and got uncomfortable, they would realize that leadership came more naturally to them. Because look, just like it is for me, as it is for anyone else, Audrey, you think that these great leaders that you aspire to, that you look up to, right? Every single day, they have this secret sauce. And it's just not the truth. Like I told you about that guy, Drew Green, running a $150 million company. He's still got all the same problems as everyone else.
Mm.
And my thing is that everyone's blagging it. You know, sure, people have more experience, but what I figured out, Audrey, is those people at the top you look up to, they've just been blagging it for longer than you have. You
Yeah.
know, no one's got a blueprint to success. And that's why at David to Goliath, the whole cornerstone is self-belief. Because
Mm.
the only thing you've got is to get to that other side of obviously the uncertainty is self-belief, because no one's going to believe in you for you. And the reason why leaders are leaders is because they stand up for what they believe in, despite not everyone agreeing. And that's the A players are drawn to those people because they obviously want to be led by someone who has strong conviction in what they believe in, especially if you have a really, really well-defined purpose and you want to make a big impact in the world.
Definitely. And I think to that point, right, and this is the last question on my end, would you like to tell us a bit more about David and Goliath? I know it's really exciting for me, and I'm sure that the listeners of London will know more.
Yeah, so David to Goliath is basically, it's my vehicle of expression. It's a newsletter. You know, we've got this audacious goal of hitting 100,000 subscribers in one calendar year. The time recording, we're at 10,000 in 9 weeks, which is fairly good. We're a little bit behind schedule, but I believe we're going to get there. But really, it was the thing that brought me back from nearly taking my own life. It gave me purpose again. And it was mainly for entrepreneurs. But then the messages started flooding in, Audrey, and I realized that there's a lot of people out there that are struggling that might not just be entrepreneurs, but they have that self-doubt and they want, you know, leaders to stand up and say to them, hey, you go through the struggle right now, but I'm not just sitting there, you know, crying myself to sleep. I'm doing something about it. I'm taking responsibility. And what I'm doing is I'm sharing, you know, what I'm doing to get myself climbing off the canvas of death to go again, and sharing all the mindset strategies, the business strategies that helped me scale this thing, everything that's got me to where I've got to today. And then I'm also interviewing other underdogs who have been from nothing despite all the odds, and they built something great. So on Tuesdays, there's two newsletters that go out every single week. Tuesday's the comeback series, me documenting my comeback and how I'm doing this and sharing the struggle, but giving people action items they can implement in their own life. And then number two is interviewing some of the best underdogs of our generation, people who have dared to be great despite all the odds, and then giving people strategic action items of what they can implement in their life today. And by the way, it's all free. These newsletters take 50 hours each to put together, including a podcast, epic storytelling, you know, the carousels and the comics, which you've seen put together by my good friend Dan. And we're just looking to really step things up and take standards to a new level. But most importantly, showing people what is possible with the power of self-belief.
Thank you so much for that, Nigel. And I think one thing that I learned from you is that stories can inspire. I myself have been inspired by so many of your personal stories and your journey in building David to Goliath. Now, for those of you who are not already subscribed, you cannot miss this, right? It's amazing. Please subscribe to Nigel's newsletters. I think it's not just about learning about, you know, your emotions and learning self-belief, but it's also really actionable tips that you can implement for your business. So really, really highly recommend it on my end. Once again, thank you so much for your time, Nigel. I learned so much and I appreciate you.
Yeah, last thing I'll say, Audrey, because this is the tagline for David to Goliath, is keep dreaming like a giant, but fight and believe in your dreams like a goddamn underdog, baby.
Let's go!